Hey, it's Tyler, host of the Tyler Knows Everything podcast, where the nose is crossed out because I always want to learn more. You're going to love today's episode, and it's real special to me because I'm interviewing an astronomer on the 50th anniversary of the launch of the Saturn V and the Apollo 11 mission that was the first manned mission to step foot on the moon. Will Young is president of the Astronomical Society of Southeast Texas. He's a torch glass creator, a musician. Has a successful YouTube channel with several viral videos. He's an astro photographer, a drone photographer, and a pilot. I mean, so many things that we talked about in this episode. Please welcome Will Young.
Tyler
knows
everything.
All right, everybody, I'm here with Will Young, and today's an exciting day because I'm having you on the same day of the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 launch.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I was thinking that on the way over here, and it's good timing. It's a little bit serendipitous, I guess, maybe, but
yeah,
it's awesome.
And the reason for that, if you haven't met Will yet, he's the president of the Astronomical Society of Southeast Texas. And I always correct people that it's not astrological society, it's astronomical. So we're talking about space and more particularly lots of observing and training for observing.
Sure.
And what's your rank now as far as observing?
Well, through the Astronomical League, which is the governing body of sort of all the astronomical societies across America, if you get 10 of these awards you have to have 5 that are prerequisite, and then 5 more that you choose. You become what's called a master observer. I just recently was able to lock that one down. It took me a little over 9 years, or around 9 years, to get those 10 awards. Each award is about 100 objects, although there was an award called the Herschel 400, which was 400 deep sky objects. So we're talking galaxies, nebulas, star clusters, open clusters, all kinds of different things. Planetary nebula is one of my favorite things. And you have to, just find the object in the sky, write down what you saw, what time, date, where you were at, and the sky conditions, and you go to the next one.
Yeah, and you're kind of like at the black belt level.
I guess so. Yeah, could. Yeah, it's I liken it to a bachelor's degree or something in that range, or maybe even a doctorate in observational astronomy, which is what it is. It's like, okay, I went and looked at that thing, cool, but it sharpens your blade every time you go out and you put the telescope under the stars and you find something manually. That's a huge, it's not easy. The sky is a big place, and so finding those little tiny faint nothings in the middle of all that vastness is pretty fun, and it's a challenge. But after a while, you get the hang of it, and it starts to become a routine, like a rhythm. You get into it, and then before you know it, you're like, wow, I just finished the Messiers. There's 110 Messier objects. So
yeah, because I'm probably the worst at observing, and so we're kind of different in as far as our astronomy. I know a lot of facts, I know a lot of cool stuff, and I can get people excited about astronomy and tell them different facts about the hottest planet, how far the sun is away, that the cool facts about the moon. But I'm not very talented at observing yet. I'm still learning. Yeah. And we'll break into some of these other things too. But in addition to being president of ASSET, the Astronomical Society of Southeast Texas, you're also, I don't know the proper terminology, but it's like a torch glass maker or blower, or is it blowing or not so much? Yeah,
I mean, there's very little glass blowing. In fact, that's probably like 4% of what you do as a glass artist. Most of it is melting.
Manipulation.
Yeah, you're getting the medium hot enough to move it. And to move things, heat is your vehicle.
Yeah.
So you put enough heat in one spot and you make a move with your sculpting tool, or you add more glass on, sort of that kind of routine. There is a little bit of, blowing into the stuff if you're making something like a bubble or, some kind of shape that you're trying to inflate. But typically, you're just in the flame, sort of melting the glass. And so, I mean, we just call those lamp workers. That's the traditional term for what I kind of do. Because there's 2 different schools as far as glass goes. There's the hot shop guys, which, by the way, there's a Netflix series called Blown Away now.
Oh, nice.
And I know a bunch of those dudes from Corning Museum of Glass, actually Eric Meek and a few of them. I've got to hang out with them several times. So that's the hot shop side of things. And then there's us little lowly torch workers over there making, whatever. There's like, what we call bead ladies, even though that's kind of they don't really care for that term, some of them, but some of them don't mind it. They make beads all day, off of a little metal rod, and they're just adding the glass on and doing that sort of thing.
For jewelry.
Yeah, for jewelry, and I mean, they make all kinds of stuff like that, pendants and bracelets and just all kinds of cool stuff. So glass is a huge world, man. That could be a whole podcast right there.
For sure.
But since the hurricane, I've kind of been out of a place to do it.
Right.
My shop got flooded, and me and my wife are working on a few things to try to get a bigger place going, and I'll be able to set my shop back up and get melting again. Nice. So I'm looking forward to that.
And I've still got like several more points to go before we kind of intro you again. So musician.
Yeah.
That's been going on for a while. You had, I guess, is a lot of your inspiration from like punk a little bit? I know you're a big 311 fan.
Oh, yeah. 311's my homeboys from way back.
But it's probably not so much your style. Your style's a little bit different.
Yeah, mine's a little bit darker.
And mellow, kind of?
A little bit mellower. Now, I have two different roads that I go down on that. I have the Deep Sky Dude side, which was just a YouTube channel and all that, where I was going to launch all my astronomy stuff and show that to the world. But it became a place where I could also put music out, because I was making all these songs for videos, which are just instrumental.
Right.
I'd put them on the video, and then I'd, release the video out, and people were like, "What song is this?" And I'd say, "Oh, it's one that I wrote." It's
actually mine, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, maybe I should put out Deep Sky Tunes Volume 1. Yeah. That way I don't have to come up with album names ever again. I just Volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Yeah. And I put that one out. That was in April of this year, and it's done really well, actually better than I thought.
Yeah. It's good crossover branding as well, because
exactly
the music enthusiasts are going to wonder what Deep Sky Dude is. They'll check that channel out. Mm-hmm. The astronomy enthusiasts are going to wonder about the music, like you said, where the song come from.
Yeah, and then if you Google me, Deep Sky Dude now, Google has been nice enough to put all that in one place. So there's actually what's called a knowledge grab on the right side of the Google screen, which has all my music and stuff like that, where you can find it. And then the other side of that is my rock music project, which is a little more like, 311 Deftones, and a bunch of, I'll miss like 50 bands in there that were my inspirations growing up. But I've been doing guitar music since I was about 17, 18 or so, and I do that under a project called Zinj.
Okay.
Zinj. And there'll be a new album of that one coming out pretty soon. It's going to be called Relics, and it's all super old songs like from back in my high school days.
Yeah.
So.
And just when you thought he wasn't interesting enough, the most recent one is Pilot.
Yeah.
Now you're doing solo flights.
Oh man, that has got to be the coolest friggin' thing I've ever done in my life, man. I mean, I've always been into aviation, obviously with, space and all that fun stuff. You got to fly to get there, right? But I've always just been a geek about jets and, fighter jets and planes of the world. And last September, just decided, my wife and I was like, it's time, go do it. And so I'm on my third solo now. My next flight will be a solo to probably Galveston, and I'll pop over, I'll do a touch and go and come on back to Beaumont, which is about an hour it takes to go over there and come back, which is pretty crazy.
I saw the most recent video of your landing, and it was so smooth.
Yeah, thanks, man.
And when I first heard that you were getting your pilot's license, I have lots of friends over the years that say they're getting their license or they have it, and I haven't really gone up with any of them, but you ask yourself sometimes, you're like, man, that guy's got a pilot license? Like, I would be kind of scared. When I heard you were getting it, you're so precise and meticulous in everything that you do with all your hobbies. I said, man, that would be one friend that I would be totally comfortable with just kicking back and letting you do your thing.
Yeah.
Because I really trust your attention to detail.
Yeah. And anytime you want to go, man, let me know. And right now I can't carry passengers because all I've got is the student pilot certificate.
Sure.
But I'm very close to my check ride, which is the very end of the journey, basically for private pilot. Then you go on to more certifications, but I'm almost there, man. I've got less than about 10 hours to log.
Yeah.
I got to take my ground test, my written test, my oral test, and then a check ride, which is you go up with an FAA dude, and they're like, okay, show me steep turns. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. What's your opinion on airplanes versus driving a car and the safety? Because driving a car on I-10's pretty risky. We just don't think about it.
Yeah, it's a thought that people don't necessarily associate with driving, but they do. Like the second they want to get into a general aviation or even a commercial aviation aircraft, they're like, oh, I'm nervous. Commercially, you're like way safer than you'd ever be on the road. Way safer. Now, when you start talking general aviation, the accident rate there is about what it is for motorcycles, according to the data.
Okay.
And you can Google this, and it fluctuates. It goes up and down. You've got a lot of people in general aviation that have more money than brains.
Right.
And they go and they get their pilot's license and they pass the test. The tests aren't that hard. Be straight with you. They're not that bad. But these people pass these tests and they get these planes and they get into situations that they should not be in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And one of the biggest killers in general aviation is flying in visual conditions, which is as a normal pilot, you're just a VFR pilot, visual flight rules. You better be able to see. The second you can't see, everybody panics. If you fly into a cloud, the only thing you had to tell you what's going on is your instrument panel. So that's a whole other classification. And a lot of these guys that end up in accidents fly from visual conditions into horrible weather stuff.
Gotcha.
And that gets them. That's what happened to the Big Bopper and, who is it? Johnny, I forget the name of the three guys that died in the plane.
Yeah, Buddy Holly.
Yeah, those guys. The day the music died or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's what happened to them. They took off. They shouldn't have taken off that night. They took off into horrible icing conditions.
Yeah.
And the plane just didn't make it.
Yeah. Speaking of the Big Bopper, there's a really cool event that's going to be in the works. In 1954, the Big Bopper did a nonstop broadcast from Jefferson Theater. He actually did it for 5 days. But what I'm going to try to do with the podcast community here in Southeast Texas is do a 24-hour broadcast out of the Jefferson Theater. Now, for 24 hours, we have to fill a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to involve you on the show and maybe do something outside with the moon observation.
Oh, that would be really cool.
Because the whole thing will be live streaming.
Mm-hmm.
People can come and go, watch the live podcast, and kind of hang out on a Saturday night. And so we're definitely going to get something like that in the works with the Beaumont Heritage Society because it's a historical event that happened here in Jefferson County.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, look for that. In the fall, we'll try to. Hopefully the skies will cooperate. You never can tell; they're always unpredictable. But your moon live streams have gotten a lot of exposure on the internet here lately.
It's blown up in my face, man. I don't really know what it is. I guess it's a lot of the Apollo stuff is in the air. We're going back to the moon with Artemis and things like that. I don't think we're going to make the time frame that's been set up because we don't have anything. The SLS hasn't even launched yet.
Right.
We have the parts, but stuff's still missing.
Yeah. Still tweaking Orion.
Capsule. Orion hasn't even flown yet. So there's a lot of I think we're going to get back to the moon in the 2020s at some point.
Right.
I think it'll be in the 2026 or so. I mean, I'm not an expert on that, but that's what I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there's a vibe in the air of the moon and the 50th anniversary of Apollo, and I think, the ability to live stream. I mean, I live streamed off this phone. This is the phone right here that I use.
Yeah. So you're holding an iPhone up to the eyepiece of the telescope. Yeah.
It's basically a regular run-of-the-mill telescope setup that, it's a lower grade quality. So it's, it's a few $1,000, which to a lot of people would sound expensive, but to us astronomers, that's low grade stuff, but it's still possible.
And that's probably all you need for the moon because the moon's pretty close anyways. But the detail is amazing because you're able to see the edge and the craters and, where there used to be volcanic activity on the moon.
The moon is just an insanely detailed world. And what's cool about the moon is it's close. Even though it's 250,000 miles away, it's still close enough for us to be able to really get some good detail. Which is not possible with things like Mars or anything past the moon.
Right.
So
even as impressive as Saturn or Jupiter look, it's still kind of fuzzy.
Yeah, there's still issues with the view. If you could get a lot closer, you'd be like, whoa, mind blown. But from our little lowly perspective on Earth, you have a lot of atmosphere to deal with. This is why they put telescopes either in space or on mountaintops because there's less atmosphere.
Sure.
If you look at an object on the horizon, you're looking through 2 or 3 times the atmosphere than if it's straight up and above you, which is a huge, huge thing. That's why I start my casts later in the night. Usually, you've had a chance for the heat of the day to calm out and go away.
Right.
All of that kind of adds to what we call the seeing, or how good you can see.
Yeah, because the moon usually starts out low on the horizon and then rises up.
Well, depending on the day, because the moon is always
in a different spot.
Yeah, and every day it's moving to the left. So if you look at the moon today, you can go, okay, by tomorrow it's going to be left of that position quite a bit.
Yeah.
Or east, whatever you want to say.
And it's definitely a life-changing experience to look through a telescope with your own eye and see Saturn and see the rings for the first time. Yeah. Where you're looking at an entirely unworldly object that's like nothing else in the solar system.
Yeah, and this phone the live broadcast it brings it to the masses, but it can never, ever, ever show you what your eyeball can at the eyepiece. It's astonishing when you see Saturn, like you said, through an eyepiece. It'll just blow you away. Jupiter as well. Jupiter's a lot closer. It's about half as close as Saturn.
Yeah, when you get a really nice telescope and you can see the bands of the different colors of the whites and the reds, then it's like, wow.
Or the Great Red Spot, you know, and then every planet has moons out there. Jupiter has 4 big ones we can see from here, the Galilean moons.
Almost like planet-sized moons.
Yeah. One of them is about the size of the moon, actually, our moon.
Yeah.
And the rest of them are a little bit smaller, but they have really high albedos or brightness, so they're reflecting a lot of light. Saturn has, from that, you can see from Earth, about 6 or 7. And, you know, it just depends on the night and where they are and sky conditions, and you can really get some good detail on those too.
And speaking of atmospheric distortion, a lot of people think that we have think that our sun is a yellow star when it's actually a white star. And when it's better represented is probably noon, when you shouldn't look at it for eye damaging, but it's yellow because it's lower on the horizon and you're seeing the spectrum come through our atmosphere, evening reds and oranges and things like that.
Yeah, the nitrogen and oxygen in our atmosphere love to scatter the blue. That's why the sky's blue.
Right.
You know, so if they scattered green, our sky would be green.
Yeah.
But that's just not the way it works, you know. So a clear blue sky looks beautiful, but it's simply because the molecules are absorbing every other color, basically, except for the blue, and they're reflecting that.
Yeah.
And that's why the sky is blue. So that has an effect on the sun, and it changes sort of the flavor of the sun.
And also the reason that snow and ice are white. If we had a yellow star, it would be yellow snow. And you don't want the yellow snow.
No, you don't want any of that. No, stay away from all that.
Well, we got to see a cool event live in person that's rare for the United States. We got to see the total solar eclipse. I think both of us ended up in the same place, and we didn't run into each other because there was thousands of people that descended upon Casper, Wyoming, which is a sleepy little mountain town, not very populated at all. You know, the entire state of Wyoming only has one area code because it's that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I went to a little bar and grill, and they had their own brand of whiskey. It was like called 307 or whatever the area code is up there. And the bartender was like, yeah, that's because that's our area code for the entire state. That's how much, there's lots of vast landowners. And so us and pretty much the whole state of Colorado drove to Casper, Wyoming.
Yeah.
And I stayed in just like a dry tent camp. It was a ranch.
Yeah, you were on like a ranch just north of Casper, right?
A ranch that set up shop of like 10 by 10 staked out areas for dry tent campers and RV campers. Probably the most revenue they've ever made in their life.
And will probably make ever again.
No, never again. And total solar eclipses aren't actually rare in the world. They happen every 2 years or so, but they're rare in the United States because there's lots of countries in the world, and it just has to cross that path. So luckily we had one that spanned the entire distance of the United States of America, and then we get another one in 2024 that's going to come through Texas.
Yeah, which I will be just west of like San Antonio area, out near a town called Leakey.
Okay.
It's kind of near Uvalde. So it's way out there. But we've already got invited about a year ago by some astronomy friends. And so I think we're going to go ahead and do that. And there's also one the year before in 2023, but it's an annular eclipse, which is where the moon's orbit is not stable around the Earth. There's times when it's close to us, and there's times when it's far away from us.
Right.
When it's close to us, you get really spectacular eclipses because it covers the full disk of the sun, and you get a longer eclipse because of that. For the annular in 2023, which is, I believe, in October or something near there, the moon is going to be at its furthest point away from us, so it won't fully cover the disk of the sun. You'll get what's called a ring of fire. The sky doesn't go dark. It gets a little like evening, but not even really that. And then it's back to normal from there. And so I will be documenting that one as well. So, I'm sure there'll be videos and stuff like that as well.
And what's amazing is that we're the only planet in our solar system that has total solar eclipses. Mars is too far away. Mars has moons, but they're too far away. Venus doesn't have any moons. Mercury's too close. So we're just in the right spot to have a total solar eclipse, at least in our lifetime.
Yeah.
There's going to come a day
That's right.
where the moon is slowly moving away from us.
And I try to get that point across to people on my live streams too. I'm like, guys, enjoy the moon while we have it. Obviously, we're all going to be dead by this time this happens anyway, but the moon is moving away from us at about an inch a year.
Right.
Or the same rate that your fingernails grow and the same rate that plate tectonics move. It's all kind of connected.
So
right?
it's interesting to see what the tides will be like then.
Oh, yeah.
Because that'll be affected. There'll be less influence of the moon's gravity.
The days will be longer on Earth. Back in the day, we used to have 6-hour days. And then as the moon, just like an ice skater that's spinning on her own axis, as she opens her arms, conservation of energy and momentum slows her down.
Right.
And so as the moon has gotten further away from us, it's slowed us down. And it will continue to slow us down until we lose it. But about the same time we lose the moon, we're going to lose the sun. It's going to run out of fuel and start what's called the planetary nebula process, which is where it's going to puff out.
Expand.
Yeah, and then the core is going to collapse, and that's going to puff it out even more. Earth will be incinerated by this point, or it'll be flung off into space. There's two competing theories there.
Yeah, I think that it'll swell up almost all the way to Mars.
Oh, yeah.
And then it'll collapse on itself, and I think ours won't go supernova.
No.
It'll because it's not big enough.
Right, it becomes a planetary nebula.
Right.
And if your viewers are interested, just Google the term planetary nebula. They're the most beautiful, most stunning objects, not only to look at through like Hubble pictures or whatever, but come out with me in a telescope one night, and I'll show you like the Ghost of Jupiter, or the Ring Nebula, or the Dumbbell Nebula, or the Blinking Planetary. There's just so many.
And that's where you usually see some of those pictures from Hubble that have lots of colors.
Like the cat's eye, exactly.
Cosmic dust. That's usually, and that's where we came from. Those things exploded over and over and over again in scattered elements, and that's where at some point that's where our solar system came from. Exploded star stuff.
The other side of that coin is the supernova, which, by the way, I noticed on your YouTube channel you have that as the banner. The Veil Nebula, super famous nebula in Cygnus, the Swan as we call it, super famous nebula. In a telescope, it's just spectacular. And that's the other side of that coin. When a star is bigger than our sun and it runs out of fuel, they explode.
Right.
And
we've got one close by. A lot of people are familiar with Orion's Belt.
That's right.
And one of the stars in Orion's Belt is Betelgeuse.
It's actually in his shoulder.
Shoulder, okay.
Yeah.
So that one definitely is the size. It's a red supergiant.
That's right.
And it'll go supernova. And we're hoping that it may be in our lifetime because it's in that time frame.
Yeah.
It's 500 million light years.
500 light years away.
500 light years.
Yeah.
Okay. So all the light.
Close.
Yeah. So all the light that we're seeing from Betelgeuse right now, when you look up at Orion constellation, is 500 years old.
Most of it, yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing the light from 500 years ago, or 500 years in a day.
Yeah. And hopefully Betelgeuse blew up 500 years ago.
Yeah.
This fall. Because hopefully it's this fall, or otherwise it'll be kind of hard because the sun's kind of over there by Orionish area.
Yeah, so there's a chance that it already blew up. And we're just waiting for that light to get to us.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy that, we wait years and decades and maybe hundreds of years to see something that already happened and it's not even there anymore. If we could travel to Betelgeuse instantly, then there would be nothing there. And all these people on Earth would be saying, well, yeah, it's right there. I see it every night.
Yeah, if you could instantly transport over there, say it had blown up. Yeah, it takes a while. Light is just a wave.
Right.
So like if you watch a firework, whatever, go off in the distance, you see the light, and it takes time for that explosion sound to get to you. Same thing with thunder and lightning.
Thunder and lightning,
yeah. It's the same thing.
And light travels very, very fast, but not fast on a cosmic scale because space is so big that it just takes... It could take 100 years. It could take millions of years.
Yeah, it's 186,000 miles per second. That's 7 times around the Earth in 1 second.
Yeah.
And I can't even do my finger, 7 times around my hand in that amount of time.
Right,
so this is an incredibly fast substance.
Even as close as our sun is, that's about 8 minutes.
8.5,
Yeah. So when you see that sun go below the horizon 8 minutes ago, it's already...
Yeah, it was way below, And I always tell people that, too, when we do outreach events with the Astronomy Club or, because we do solar and lunar stuff all the time around Beaumont and Port Arthur and things like that.
Yeah, tell us about the solar telescope because you may think, you're not supposed to look at the sun in a solar telescope, but you have a hydrogen alpha telescope.
The club, the Astronomical Society of Beaumont we actually bought a hydrogen alpha telescope. It's a a telescope that looks at it's built for one star.
Yeah.
You know, that's it.
Mhm.
And it's a pretty pricey telescope, but it is on loan for the members. So if you become a member of the society after a while, and if you go through a class on training you on the safety aspect of how to use it, you can take it home with you and go home and study the star, our nearest star, in detail you really can't get with just a filter on the front of a telescope. Because there's two different basically there's two different kinds. There's way more, but there's, as far as us amateurs go, there's hydrogen alpha and white light.
Mm-hmm.
The white light looks at what we call the photosphere of the sun, which is the surface, even though it's not at all.
Yeah.
But it shows you like the sunspots and some of the other stuff like facula and plage and stuff like that different phenomenon like that. You can look at light bridges, and you can even see solar flares sometimes in white light.
Yeah.
And on the hydrogen alpha spectrum, you're like filtering everything out except for one little band in like the 656 nanometer range, which is red. And at that range, you're looking at what's called the chromosphere. So the stuff that's above the photosphere. And that is where the fun stuff, in my opinion, begins, because you see stuff hanging off the sides of the sun, like the prominences.
Yeah, eruptions.
Yeah, you have, there's so many different names. You have prominences on the side. If a prominence is on the front, it's a filament. You have sunspots. You have plage and facula. You have stuff like Ellerman bombs, and there's just all kinds of weird stuff going on.
And sometimes
it's fascinating.
You see those little eruptions, and they look so tiny from where we are, but they're larger than planets.
Yeah, they're larger than the Earth typically. Yeah. So typically when the sun's in an active phase, which right now we're in solar nappy time.
Yes.
So the sun's really quiet. There's like no sunspots, no nothing really.
Right.
So it's kind of boring for outreach events, which we try to do what we can.
Yeah.
But in the next few years, we're coming back up. The sun's gonna be grabbing some coffee and starting to wake up again.
Nice.
So.
Well, when you did the photography at the Eclipse, is that the one that got picked up by the Science Channel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to, my goal was to just go and videotape it in 4K. Videotape, even though that's an archaic term.
Yeah.
Put data on a memory card in 4K.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it, I practiced, and I kind of knew what I wanted, and I kind of knew where I was going with all this, and had no idea what would happen. I was just going for it. The main goal was to just look up and enjoy it.
Right.
But I wanted to have something going.
Yeah.
And I got it, and Science Channel hit me up, and I gave them the footage for free because I was like, well, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And they ended up airing it, and I actually got a copy of that now, and I need to go and take the copy and cut it up, like where all my clips were used and stuff like that. Because every time they came back from commercial on that episode, it was my footage.
Wow.
So it was just like I was blown away, And they've recently contacted me again. In fact, when I get home, I got to upload the lunar impact video that I got.
Yeah. So you were doing a live feed, and it was just a regular night of moon observing, and an event happened.
It was during the total lunar eclipse, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's super, super rare that this stuff even happens. Yeah. The moon has to be really dark for you to see an explosion on it, because it's normally so bright. You can't, if the moon is full, you'll never see an impact there. It's just too bright, unless it's like a big one, which that'd be really cool.
Right.
But we were out at Claiborne Park. We were doing an outreach event for the club, and I was just, again, running 4K, just let it roll and see what happens. And we were actually, me and my buddy Troy Harper were actually talking about stuff hitting the moon. We were making jokes about aliens, like, here, hold my beer, watch this, and like landing in Roswell and all this, fun, just silly stuff.
Yeah.
And then something hit the moon. None of us saw it, obviously.
Oh, okay. So you didn't know about it until you went back and watched it.
So I made this awesome eclipse video where I put, awesome music and just sped up the whole eclipse so you could watch it like 4,000 times natural speed.
Right.
And a friend of mine, Sarah Silva, messaged me, and then Becky Romatowski, another astronomer friend of mine, messaged me and was like, "Did you catch the explosion?" And I'm like,
wow.
"What are y'all talking about? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about." Yeah. They're like, "Something hit the moon. You need to check your data."
Whoa.
So I went back, and I saw they sent me a link to an article. I knew what phase that part of the eclipse was, so I went to the video, and I'm watching a 15-minute long clip because I'd stop my camera and restart it because the camera I use has a tendency to, at 30 minutes, to stop recording. So I had to monitor. I had to babysit it all night long.
Right.
And I was getting really close to the end of this one clip, man. I mean, I'm like right at the end. And there it was. It was just like, boop, just a little spot. And I almost threw my chair out the window. I was so excited. So I immediately began like just cutting that, zooming in and slowing it down and all kinds of stuff. And apparently I was the only person that got it not only in 4K, but at 30 frames a second. So I had more frames of the explosion than anybody else. Other people had pictures.
Okay.
But they didn't have the initial explosion and the decay.
And that's like of everybody in the world, basically. I think.
Yes, everyone.
Wow.
I'm the only person that I know of that got 4K.
Wow.
So I'm going to be in papers.
Yeah.
A couple of people have already hit me up. I was talking to Phil Plait, the bad astronomer.
Yeah.
And like he was referring me to people. It's just crazy. You know, it's crazy talk. And that video on YouTube, right as I uploaded it, I knew it was going to be huge. I had no idea it's over 300,000 views now.
So was that the one that caused Deep Sky Dude to kind of go viral?
A little bit.
Or was there one before that or after? Because you've had so many things. You've had meteor showers. You have almost everything has gone viral a little bit.
Yeah, you know, it's been really hard, man. It's really frustrating trying to build how hard it is to build a platform from nowhere.
Right.
And I've just gotten really lucky. You know, obviously I've been in the right place at the right time with the right gear and a little bit of know-how to go along with all of that.
Yeah, and definitely talented at your craft.
Well, thank you. I
sure.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
But you gotta be out there and you gotta be doing the science.
Yeah.
And us amateurs have a lot to offer the professional astronomers, you know, clearly, because we're able to do some of the stuff that they can't.
Yeah, you know, they may be in a lab 8 to 5 and
Exactly.
then they come home and, you know, they have to get up the next morning. Some of those times when you're observing, you're out pretty much all night, you know, even to the early mornings.
Oh, yeah. If it's clear, I'm out till it's not.
Yeah.
Usually, or until the sun comes up. You know.
Did you end up getting 1,000 subscribers to the channel yet?
Yeah. I'm at 16, I think, or getting close to 16 or 17, somewhere in there.
1,700?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what happens when you hit 1,000?
Well, you can monetize.
Okay.
But you have to have a certain amount of watch minutes too.
Okay.
On top of your 1,000 subscribers, you have to have a certain amount of watch minutes. And then YouTube has to approve you, thanks to Jake Paul and all them super fantastic dudes.
Right, the YouTubers.
Yeah. Because I was monetized, and then he released that video, boom, done. And then it was like back again once it was about a year that I was unmonetized.
I guess, and that's probably where podcasters kind of have an advantage because their videos are an hour or 2 hours, maybe. Whereas yours, you want to keep them interesting. They're a little bit shorter, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I have longer videos too, but you know, I typically try to keep things under 20 minutes, unless we're talking about like the Star Party recaps.
Right.
It's impossible to shoot a 10-day long event and whittle it down to 20 minutes. You know, I shot 10 hours of footage at the last Texas Star Party.
Yeah, and you've even got some drone footage. You're a pretty talented drone operator.
Thank you,
so
man.
You've got the drone video at some of those events that makes it really cool.
Brings a new perspective to see the observing fields where all the astronomers are set up from the air. You know, it's just kind of gives you that overview effect.
Yeah, I mean, drones can get footage with an amateur that normally you would have to have a helicopter back in the day.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
When you're doing flybys on events or your house or things like that.
Yeah, there's so many cool things you can do with the drone. So many business aspects of it too. Of course, you got to be Part 107 certified through the FAA to make any money on it.
Sure.
I'm eventually going to do that, but right now I'm kind of concentrating on the actual flying part, the unmanned, the wheel-manned space or aircraft, whatever. So
what are you using for your 4K camera? Is it a DSLR?
Yeah, DSLR.
Or DSLR?
It's a Sony A7S Mark II.
Oh yeah, okay.
And if you're into low light videography, I mean, this camera there's nothing better in my opinion. It does 400,000 ISO.
Yeah.
So
because you really have to manipulate that lighting to capture, astro photography.
Yeah, and astrophotography is one of the hardest things you can get into because you've got to be able to track the sky with incredible accuracy. And then you've got to get good data, and then that's only half the battle. Then you got to go home and process that data, which I'm the worst at. That's why I've done thousands of astro images, but you only ever see a few come out of me because it's the processing is where I sort of lack talent. And I'm getting better. There are people that are way better than me, and luckily I can hang out with those people and learn from them. But, it's getting better. Now, the Sony A7 allows me to do what I like to do, what I like to specialize in, which is one-shot stuff.
Right.
So I go out and take just one shot of Messier 31 or the Andromeda Galaxy. I take that image home, I pull the levels around, change the contrast, change the exposure and stuff, and you end up with something pretty nice. Other cameras, it's really hard to do that because you need to take 50 images, stack them, and then process it.
Did you take the photograph of Andromeda with that camera?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I saw that about a week ago.
Yeah, I've been uploading some oldies that I somehow missed on the Instagram. I'm not really good at social media. My wife has helped me tremendously with this.
Yeah, your wife is pretty interesting too. You know, she's a USA Today best-selling author
4 times.
And it's all self-publishing. I definitely want to have her on in the future to kind of talk about that path of self-publishing, which is very inspiring to a lot of people out there.
I told her that I was like, more than likely you're going to get a call from Tyler when I'm done.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, that's going to be awesome. So she's excited to come by and hang out with you.
Yeah, I've always been a fan. It's so easy to help a friend on social media simply by liking their posts and giving it a share. And it's free. You don't have to sponsor them. You don't have to, buy their merch.
Exactly.
Just give them a like and a share.
And that's one thing when I do my live streams, like on the moon or Saturn or Jupiter, whatever I'm doing that night, I probably do it too much, but I really like to take a few seconds every now and again to thank everybody for sharing me, because I do have a Patreon and I do have merchandise now, thanks to a bunch of people that wanted coffee mugs and T-shirts and stuff like that. I'd never done that on my own, but they're like, do it, please.
Yeah, that's great.
So I did it, and I've got some supporters in that arena, but, I'm just excited to be sharing this because it's something that I'm extremely passionate about.
Yeah.
And I love sharing it.
And I think that'll come along just by pushing good content. This will be... probably around 10 episodes by the time I, release this one. And I didn't really want to do Patreon or sponsors until I got a lot of content in and maybe start pushing it around episode 10. But before that, there's been such good feedback with the episodes. I actually had a friend that said, hey, I'd like to sponsor some of your studio costs, because I really believe in what you're doing. And I said, that's great. I didn't even have to ask for it. It just slid right into my DM. So I think the same thing for you. You've had, the science channel that wants to work with you in the future. You've got a big following with the live shots. I think things are just going to naturally occur that you'll be able to take advantage of to help build your brand and to be able to do cooler stuff, buy more gear and expand your reach. And, what's cool when you go to events is, you pull your RV. So have you already made a plan to go to Area 51 in September?
Oh yeah. I was actually the guy that created that page. No, I do look forward to watching the live stream of that. Yeah. But in my mind,
it's mostly trolling.
As much as I want them to, I want to know what's in there and all that to see if Bob Lazar was really legit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm skeptical about all that. I'm a huge skeptic. You probably know that.
Sure.
But the UFO phenomena has intrigued me since I was a little kid. It's maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. I'm on the fence. I don't care. I don't know. I've never really seen anything. I can't necessarily tell you what it was. But
because you've seen the light pillars, you've seen and you are camera artifacts,
satellites. I mean satellites. People are like, "Whoa, what's that? It's not a plane." Well, no, it's just something in orbit around the Earth. So who knows what it is?
Yeah, the average person doesn't know when International Space Station is flying over, and that thing is moving.
It's bright,
it's going 17,000 miles an hour. It orbits the Earth every 90 minutes, and it's one of the brightest objects other than the moon that you'll see in the night sky.
That's right.
Mainly because it's so close to us. It's very low Earth orbit. And the North Star, which people think is the brightest, is only like the 49th brightest object. It's way down there. Some of the brightest things you see right away are planets, Venus and Mars, Jupiter.
Jupiter right now is just blazing out there, yeah.
So that's why their wishes aren't coming true, because they're wishing on planets.
They're wishing on nothing.
And a good way to tell is usually a star has the flicker and the twinkle, and a planet is just solid. It just looks like a light bulb is just stuck up there.
And that's because the light is younger. It takes a lot less time for the light from a planet to get here versus the point source light of a star to get here.
Right.
So there's a big difference there. But yeah, you're right. Planets don't twinkle, stars do. But if you could go into space, nothing twinkles. Everything's steady state.
Yeah.
Which is a cool thing to think about. But
yeah, Michael Collins, who was one of the crew members of Apollo 11, he actually didn't get to walk on the moon because he had to stay in the command module.
He was the pilot, right?
Yeah, and so he was orbiting the moon while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were walking around on the ground. And so he would go around to the dark side of the moon, and we can't see a lot of sky objects because we're in the city and there's a lot of light pollution. If you go to Big Ben, you can see a little bit more. You might be able to see the clouds of the Milky Way, but if you're in space, and you're on the dark side of the moon where the sun is blocked out, he said he saw the most amazing view looking out that window. And I can't even imagine the thing
man.
that he said for those however many minutes long, he just pretty much ignored everything related to the mission and just stared out the window.
Yeah.
And there's only a handful of humans in history that have ever seen that.
Yeah, seen the far side of the moon, which is, a place that we will never see from Earth because the moon is tidally locked to the planet.
So the side of the moon that we see is going to be going around the Earth without rotating.
Well, so the way it works is the moon is actually spinning on its own axis, but it does so once every 28 days.
Right.
Which happens to be the amount of time it takes to go around the Earth once in its orbit. So its rotation matches its orbit, and therefore...
I think the moon goes around the Earth twice every 24 hours. Is that right?
It goes around the Earth once every 28 days.
Oh, once every... Okay.
Yeah, and so it orbits on its own axis every 28 days as well. So it just so happens that's one of the smoking guns for how it formed.
Because I guess the dark side does receive light.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that we don't see that side.
That's right. Yeah. When new moon, right? So the moon and the sun are in the same part of the sky together.
Right.
The far side or the dark side, which is technically the far side because we'll never see it.
Yeah.
The far side is fully illuminated.
Yeah.
The near side, which is the side we always see with the man in the moon and the Maria and all that, that's completely black because the moon is over there by the sun and, it's really hard to see.
And it's interesting the difference in the surface.
Oh, yeah.
The far side has just been
cratered.
battered.
Oh, man, yeah. And then but the near side has the Maria, which are the big gray seas.
Yeah, it looks almost like a lake.
Yeah,
but it's just
actually just basalt. That's like volcanic material that has kind of come up from the core as the moon condensed and cooled.
Yeah, and so what we think might be a crater is actually like a caldera, right? Is it the remnants of a?
Yeah, I mean you can look at it sort of like that. It's just like a massive area where upflow from volcanic material has gone, and there's all kinds of variations on that. There's different mineral deposits in different places. So you get a lot of like striking areas. And I try to go over a lot of that in my mooncast, but you end up missing so much. Because like you said, man, it's kind of blown up in my face.
Yeah.
And I've got like over 2,000 followers now. I went from like 300 followers in a couple of months to over 2,500 now.
Yeah.
And so it's almost impossible now for me to keep up with the comments.
Right.
So I'm talking about one thing and then somebody asks a question and I go off on a tangent there. You know what I mean?
And I think most people that have gone to your level and beyond, you kind of just have to post and then leave it. And then you kind of let the people comment because there's no way you can keep up with the comments. And
I do try to engage my viewers and listeners, though, because if you do that, you bring them in closer. They now become not a viewer. They are a participant. You know?
Yeah, I mean, just imagine if your favorite celebrity replies personally to one of yours. Yeah.
Well, a buddy of mine, Ron Sparkman, who runs this thing called Stardom Space on Instagram. Check him out. He's doing some insane stuff, man. He's just blowing and going. We were doing a live stream on his Instagram, which I've never really done anything on Instagram before. It was Saturn. We're just hanging out. And a guy named Richard Patrick jumps in the chat with us and is like, this is incredible. I noticed he had the gear with the check next to him. So I'm
the
like,
verified check.
Who is this guy? And his name was Filter Richard Patrick. So I'm like, wow, I don't get it.
Oh, right.
And then I realized, because he was talking about his music and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden it hit me that this is the lead singer of Filter.
Right.
The 90s band Filter.
That's so wild.
And it was crazy because he's like talking to us and, hanging out and having a good time. And then he's like, hey, I want to score one of y'all's videos. Get with me. Here's my email.
Man.
And so...
Yeah, that's what I mean by the opportunities to kind of just drop in your lap like that.
Yeah.
When you have quality content out there, it catches people's attention. And you recently went to Hayden Planetarium maybe about a year or two ago?
It was like January or so. Yeah.
And so for the fans, the reason Hayden Planetarium is significant is that's Neil deGrasse Tyson's day job. He's the director of Hayden Planetarium. And I often wondered if you could just be in the planetarium and see his office, or if he's working 9 to 5. He tours a lot, so he's probably out of town.
Yeah.
And he has his own radio show, podcast. But didn't you actually get to chat with him or converse with him or something of that nature?
Yeah, I've spoken with him on the phone, sort of. Some friends of mine back in the day, they had an internet radio show, essentially a podcast, but it went out live. And they had Neil on one day.
Wow.
And a couple of weeks before they were going to have him on, they're like, hey, we want a couple of callers to call in.
Okay.
Will you be one of those people? And I'm like, yeah. So, time came and I was at work. I was actually working at a credit union at the time. I asked if I could take like a 15-minute break.
Mm-hmm.
I went in the back office and I called their radio show and talked to Neil for a few minutes, which was pretty cool. So that's and at the end of my question, though, he said, "Good question." So I was like, sweet.
Nice.
And then the question was, how do lowly people like me and people like you who don't have degrees, who aren't professionals at this, we're just people doing things.
Yeah, just astronomers.
How do we, get people on board with us when we tell them something, like how do we maintain a credible line of thought with these people, right?
Yeah.
And he was just like, just give them the information and they're either going to take ownership of it or they're not, and that's really the in and the out of it.
Yeah, I've also, because my education background has nothing to do with astronomy. A lot of it I've learned from, social media and reading, and then you, and it's far surpassed the average person as far as what they know, and so people are always very interested and engaged and impressed. But you're right, it's just something that isn't very popular in education. There's usually only one astronomy class, and it's like an elective.
Yeah, or it's like an intro.
Yeah.
And you and I could ace that class, like we could test out.
Yeah, for sure. And so I guess the path that most astronauts are taking, they're more in the engineering, physics, mathematicians even.
Computer coding. Most professional astronomers are basically just coders.
Right.
They know a lot of astronomy, but then they get into like coding, and that's basically what professional astronomy is.
Yeah, I think somebody even asked Michael Collins on his Instagram, what classes should I take to become an astronaut, and he said he broke it down of how few astronauts are actually selected out of the pool and out of everyone in the United States. He said basically try to come up with the most impressive resume ever.
Yeah,
and then just hope that you get lucky. There's really no rhyme or reason. I think back then a lot of them were maybe military pilots or test pilots.
Test pilots in the Air Force,
and
absolutely.
so there's really no prerequisite or rhyme or reason other than just try to be a genius.
You got to be the right stuff, man, because a lot can go wrong up there, and you need to be able to fix it there.
Yeah.
With very minimal help from planet Earth. Because if you're at the moon, it takes a second and a half for the radio signal to get there.
Yeah.
If you're on Mars, it'll take 14 minutes to get the update from mission control. And then you've got to process that, do stuff, and then transmit back to them. It's another 15 minutes. So you're talking about a 40-minute round trip sometimes for these commands. And that's why everything up there is automated usually.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be psychologically stable to be able to handle that. You have to be physically capable to handle the G-force, because most of us are like, oh, yeah, I'd love to go to space. Well, they probably can't even handle the G-force of a fighter jet.
Yeah.
And you've got to be, you're strapped to,
a bomb,
billions of pounds of dynamite, basically.
Yeah. You're pulling some G's.
Yeah, even for the Saturn V, for the people that live in Southeast Texas, if you've ever been to downtown Beaumont and seen Edison Plaza, which is one of the tallest buildings in downtown Beaumont, if you stacked another Edison Plaza on top, then the Saturn V would be a little bit taller than that. That's to give you the scope of the size, and so
huge.
Definitely for all those people that think we didn't go to the moon or whatever, when you look at a spacecraft that size, and you can see it at Johnson Space Center right down the road in Houston, it wasn't going around the block. The amount of fuel that they loaded into that thing, and I mean, it definitely went to where it's going. What's also amazing is that when it's fairly close to the Earth's atmosphere, when it uses all of that fuel, and then it's just that little command module, it takes so much fuel to get, escape the Earth's gravity.
Oh yeah, the Earth is a big thing. And so it's got a lot of mass on it. And the whole first stage of the Saturn V is just to get the rest of it up there so it can keep pushing. You need a lot of energy to get up there.
Yeah, and that's everybody's answer of, why aren't we going to the moon all the time, or why aren't we going to Mars? The amount of power, because all we have is combustion engines, and the amount of power that it takes and the amount of fuel is just not efficient for what we need to do. We really need a different fuel source, and we haven't quite got there yet. Yeah. And that's kind of what they were talking about in that Bob Lazar documentary on Netflix of, if you haven't seen it yet, which I know you probably have.
I've gotten through half of it, actually.
Yeah, so he was contracted as a scientist in the mid-'80s to work at a place called S4, or S2,
S4.
S4, yeah, which is about 15 miles away from what we know as Area 51.
Groom Lake.
And they kind of recruited him because he was this scientist working at Los Alamos, New Mexico, where they did a lot of the missile testing and things like that. And he had a rocket-powered car.
Like a car. He rocket-powered everything,
yeah,
that guy.
rocket-powered bicycle.
Mhm.
And he's young. He's in his 20s. So they recruited him. And he claims that they had 9 spacecrafts. And they were working on reverse engineering the mechanisms. And what he says is it was a gravitational wave producing reactor. So whereas we have like an electromagnet that we can flip a switch and produce a electromagnetic field, we don't have anything on Earth that can produce gravity waves. We just experience gravity because we're on a massive object. And if we go to a larger massive object, we have more gravity. But he claimed that there was this reactor that you could basically flip on, and it creates a force field. It creates gravitational waves, and that's the propellant. And which would be far more superior than a combustion engine.
Yeah.
And his theory is that the reason that we have it is because whoever reverse engineers and figures out that technology on Earth, they win.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got with military implications. And it's sad that we're still in that mindset.
Sure.
Versus, because he said it's backwards of typical science. They compartmentalized everything so that he only works on this project, and these scientists are kept separate and they work on this project. And he said that's not the scientific community. The scientific community is to work on everything at the same time and problem solve and come up with a solution. So that it's an interesting story. If anything else, I
want to believe him. I'm like Agent Mulder, man. I want to believe. Although I'm more like Scully, but I'm like that poster in his office. I want to believe.
Yeah.
But I just don't see the evidence. There's some compelling things like the gimbal and go fast video.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
I think what makes people believe Bob Lazar is that things that he's said in the past have kind of come out as being verified by other people.
Sure.
And the way it was handled about, them erasing his birth certificate and erasing his credentials, but still having stuff like a newspaper clipping that can verify it, or real people that were like, yeah, he totally worked there. And identifying the hand badging system. It was this thing that you put your hand in and it measures the bone length of your fingers, which is, I guess, individual, like a fingerprint. I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
And he told people about this and they were like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Well, they found the device and he, it was exactly how he described it. And
imagine what they have now. Yeah, that was mid '80s. They probably got all kinds of retinal, facial recognition, all that.
And I always think about the things that the government accidentally gets leaked, or the things that they're telling us. Imagine the things that they're not telling us.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the people that are going to try to storm Area 51.
Yeah.
Area 51, as much as I want to know what's going on out there, we all know it's there. It's there, but in the interest of national security, it's better for a lot of us to not know what's going on out there, because the SR-71 was built out there. I mean, that's where Skunk Works did all of their work.
Yeah, I think those stealth helicopters that SEAL Team 6 used in the Obama, that's where they had to fly to get them or whatever and test them. And so that's a lot of things that people see as stealth bomber,
F-117.
Yeah, they're seeing it being tested, just like Bob said, every Wednesday night when traffic is the lowest, he brought his friends out there and said, you're going to see this and you're going to see that.
Yeah.
And that's probably the stuff that they're seeing before it comes about. And you always think they and the government. Well, it's just people. Yeah. All the people that are out there right now at Area 51 working on classified stuff all go, they may go home to a family, they have kids, they're only going to have a lifespan of 60, 70 years, and they're going to get replaced. There's new people. They're just like us. Yeah. And so there is no really they, it's us.
Right. Yeah. And it's absurd that they want to storm the place because replace Area 51 with Fort Polk or Fort Hood.
Right.
Let's all storm Fort Polk.
Yeah.
You people are insane. They're just going to bring out the AH-60s and drop hellfires on you till you stop.
Yeah.
And it's only going to take a couple with a dozen or few people or so people to die. The rest of them are going to be like, I've made a mistake. I'm not going in now.
Because we're obviously talking about an internet joke. I don't think that it's actually going to happen.
I don't either.
I think people may go to the town and do an event. But what's scary is that flat Earth theory also started as an internet joke. It started as a troll. and people grabbed a hold of it, and now it's an entire society that has like an annual convention. And so I'm worried that this may.
Well, in fairness, I think flat Earth kind of started back in the age where people were just dumb. Back thousands of years ago, where everything looks flat.
Yeah, it did start there, and before Copernicus and Galileo.
Yeah, and then Eratosthenes was really the guy that put it to bed.
Yeah,
with two sticks.
Now for them, you can't really fault them because they didn't have the tools that we have and the technology and photographs of a full Earth and real live astronauts that could fit an entire Earth into just a single click, point and shoot.
That's right.
Nowadays, there's irrefutable evidence. There's dozens of satellites that take a full Earth photo that are far enough away from multiple countries. It's not just America. That's
it would have to be the whole world being in on it.
Yeah, and there's just no reason. They always say that if you believe that's around Earth, you're a shill and it's just for money. Well, for what? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Convince people the Earth is a globe. Profit.
Yeah,
it's like how?
Yeah.
What?
And so I've been searching for a legitimate flat Earth theory person, if there is such a thing, because I definitely want to debate them on the show. I know you did an internet debate that was pretty cool. It lasted 24 hours and it was, it was typed on comments and things. I really want to get one in here. And, I even thought about bringing you on, but I didn't want to tag team them. I didn't want to, have two against one.
Unless you just want to moderate it.
Yeah.
And then,
So I have no idea if I could find two, or I might even do something creative like a game show, like hey, if you get stumped, you can phone a friend and I'll bring you in on live. But I think I can handle my own. But,
I think you could too, man.
But it would be really cool to have you on some of the measurement things that you are a little bit more aware of. But you started out the debate pretty much the same way I would. I would say, hey, give me your best convincing, just come right out with
just
it.
Just one piece of evidence.
Just give me the one piece of evidence that you think is just going to really make me change my mind. And it's always a big nothing.
Yeah, the guy's example was a sextant. Oh, well, I was in the Navy.
Yeah.
And when I was in the Navy, I used a sextant to measure the distance between the Earth and the sun. Well, no, that's not what a sextant does. It measures the angular distance of the sun and the moon or that star over there so you can figure out where you are on the planet. It doesn't measure distances. That's not what a sextant does.
Right.
So right there, it was over. The whole thing was over. So the rest of it was just fun time for me because I was like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then tons of things that they would have a difficult time explaining, like time zones, things like
sunsets.
Why can't you see Everest from here? Watching ships disappear beyond the horizon.
First.
Yeah, from the bottom to the top. Just real world things that you can actually do. There was the Netflix documentary with Mark Sargent where
that was funny.
They do an experiment at the very end where they're shining a laser light probably around 3 to 5 kilometers somewhere, and they have a hole cut out and then a backboard.
Yeah.
And they want to take the measurement as if the Earth were flat and shine that laser to go through the hole. And they said, well, if the Earth is round, then it's going to have to, you would have to raise it up.
Yeah, it would have to be.
And so they're on the radio and they're like, all right, turn it on. And they're like, it's on. They're like, I don't see the light. Are you sure it's on? Yeah, it's on. And the guy on the radio goes, hey, raise up the thing 3 feet. And it goes, bing,
boom, there.
And then the credits roll.
Yeah.
And then
what a brilliant way to end it, by the way. I laughed so hard.
Oh, yeah,
so
for
good.
sure.
I mean, because that's it.
And they purchased like a gyroscope or something.
Is that laser experiment? Yeah. And they keep getting the answer.
Right. They got the answer, which was not the answer they hoped for.
No.
And they said, well, I'm going to build a Faraday cage and put it in there. And then I need to do this, that, and the other. And it's no, like you're just seeing a validated experiment of a spherical Earth.
Yeah.
And
they're proving themselves wrong every day. Right. And I think that's the most beautiful thing. It goes kind of back to what Neil told me in that phone call, like, let them get the information, give it to them and then let them chew on it, because if you just force it down their throat, they won't take ownership. But the second they take ownership, it becomes a part of their psyche.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And Neil says sometimes people aren't ready to believe because when you present them with facts and photos, and usually he says if it's a photo, they'll say, well, that's a fake. And he said, well, it's not a fake. You're just not willing to accept it. And therefore, you're not ready to believe. And therefore, I can't convince you because if this is, there's not a whole lot of evidence you need beyond a photo, then if you're not accepting that, then there's not a lot I can do. So
yeah, that whole Netflix documentary, and then what he's talking about is it was just rife with confirmation bias because they want this to be true, so they'll fit the entire world and its whole worldview around that.
Yeah.
And people do that a lot. You know, I've been guilty of that in the past, but you know, as I get older, I sort of, you know, I'm just become more skeptical and let things prove themselves to me over time.
Yeah.
Because there's really no reason to believe in anything unless you know it to be true, and then let it be true.
Right. And I've just been amazed at how they monetized it into you know, they have expo, just like you go to Comic-Con, they have the booths, they have models that they sell, merchandise, and then it's become a conference. And it's actually going to be in Texas this coming year in the fall.
Oh, really?
It's going to be in the Dallas area.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I wanted to try, I would make some moves to try to get Mark Sargent here. You know, I would pay for that. He's just really hard to find.
Or just show up out there and be like, Tyler knows everything on location.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
He's deleted a significant amount of his social media. Just probably because of negative trolling on the other side. But I should be able to find one. There's some locally. I just don't know if I want somebody that can really kind of hang in there for a 1 hour debate.
Oh, yeah.
You know, unfortunately with debates, sometimes people consider the winner of who can argue the best. You know, think of the lawyers in the court system.
That's right.
But with this, I would want to engage a little bit more and, you know, have the monitor up and say, you can pull up some websites, you can pull up some data, I'll pull up and
point,
you know,
counterpoint. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you give people a chance like that to sort of develop their argument behind the scenes, it becomes a lot more focused and a lot more cohesive as you're going through it, because
to prepare for it.
Like what you probably saw in that debate with me and that guy, it was just everywhere. We were just all, you know, going back and forth. He would, and you know, I would pin him on something and then he'd crawfish out of that and go into something else. You know, it's called evade and deflect.
Right.
It's a typical debate tactic when you can't answer the question at hand.
Yeah.
And he was good at that. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
But that makes you look less credible.
Yeah. I think what keeps those people in the loop is it's not something that we can easily show them. I can't say, hey, let's buy a ticket and I'll take you up.
Right.
You know, I can take you in a plane. You know, it's not even realistic for me to take you in a ship because that takes weeks and months to circumvent the Earth in a ship or, you know, show me the ice wall. So it's one of those things where you can't really, you can't prove to them in person.
Right.
You know, it's not feasible to say, well, just go up on the next SpaceX flight and see for yourself.
Yeah. And like we were saying, you know, once these people get this confirmation bias, you're really not going to be able to give them anything that's going to convince them.
Yeah.
You know, their whole worldview is based on this, and they need it to be true for whatever reason they believe in it.
Yeah.
And I've seen varying reasons why people believe in it. It's typically one reason, but it's, you know, it's all about confirming that worldview to them. And if you're saying something else, well, you're just a NASA shill. You're just a person who bought into it.
Right.
Everything you're saying is false. That's dangerous.
They do seem to throw a lot of shade at NASA. You know, they poke fun at the logo with the you know, saying it's a serpent tongue and things like this isn't NASA. You know, there's 11 different countries that are in the International Space Station.
Yeah.
It's not just us, but
yeah, Canada, Japan, Russia. You know, I mean, there's a bunch of nations doing incredible space work.
And
so
the next big NASA project that I'm really excited about is the James Webb Telescope.
Oh yeah,
and that's going to change a lot of people's opinions of things because we're going to be able to see farther than we've ever seen before because it's got like 24 karat gold mirrors.
Yeah, and it's looking in the infrared versus Hubble.
Yeah, Hubble
mostly was in the visual, although there was some infrared instruments. Obviously,
yeah. Hubble's basically a telescope like what you have.
Yeah,
but up in the orbit.
Right. Yeah, it's you know, I have a 6-inch what's called a Ritchie-Chrétien telescope, an RC.
Yeah, Hubble has a mirror.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's 2 mirrors actually, and then maybe even 3, but it's 1 primary and 1 secondary. The light comes in, bounces off that, secondary goes through the middle of the primary and into the instrument bay.
Yeah. And then
Webb's going to be a little bit different, but similar in optical.
And it'll probably take a while for James Webb data to be processed, but it's going to be able to see farther and, you know, even give hints of how old things are, and it's going to change a lot of people. You know, a lot of people there's people out there that think the Earth is, you know, a couple thousand years old, 6,000 years old, and you know, listening to data from James Webb is gonna really irk them. But,
yeah, you know, I mean, I was one of those people that believed that long ago, believe it or not, and I was able to sort of escape all that mentality and just embrace the reality of the universe, which I think reality is stranger than fiction, like 90% of the time.
Yeah.
So in my mind, it's more beautiful that way.
Yeah, space is entirely more peculiar than science fiction. You know, there's planets out there that are like a diamond planet.
Yeah.
planets that are made of gold, and it really it's crazy how we value this tiny substance that's just so abundant
Yeah.
everywhere else. If we could just mine one asteroid, that's one of the goals, to capture an asteroid and mine it.
Right.
It would be enriched with the building blocks of the solar system.
Sure. And we saw recently how gold is created. We visually saw it with science because we were looking. We saw. We felt the gravitational waves hit us through LIGO, which is a thing in Louisiana and Washington.
Right.
And it's lasers, and it detects gravitational waves.
And that was just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that we detected gravity. We can observe gravity.
Right.
But we've never actually detected it as a tangible thing.
Sure.
We thought that gravitons, were the elements that created gravity, when we found out it's a wave, just like light is a wave. And that's crazy, because that opens up a whole new realm of possibilities that we do not understand.
It does. It does. But when we got those gravitational waves, they knew where it came from, so they started pointing optical telescopes over there.
Right.
And we actually saw gold, because we're talking about it, gold being created.
Yeah.
And it's when two neutron stars, actually, you need insane amounts of mass to coalesce and become this massive energetic event.
Right.
And gold is created. And I think they said something like 200, this number may be wrong, so don't quote me on it, but it's like 200 or so Earth's worth of gold that were created in basically an instant. And you could actually see the reddening of this event through optical telescopes and watch that gold be created. That's something we've never done before. Humanity's, we're pretty awesome for as dumb as we are.
Yeah, exactly. We think that we're cool because we're the most advanced organism on this planet.
Right.
And, we're kind of in charge and we're smarter than the animals. But there may be life forms out there somewhere that are too far away to communicate with each other. But we may be, an ant or on the level of a dog compared to their intelligence.
That's right.
Because we don't know how long they've been around. We've been around for several thousand years.
A few 100,000.
Yeah. What if they have been around for 1,000,000 years and they've gotten past the warring and the pillaging and the things that we can't seem to get away from, and they're just devoted on technology and happiness and advancement of their society.
All that would have taken was them to evolve without the R part of the brain, which is the leftover part of your brain that comes from the reptilian ancestors we had. And the R part of your brain is where jealousy, rage, and all that nonsense is.
Right.
And so, like you said, if we didn't have that part of the brain, it's just a small, like maybe the size of a hard-boiled egg or something like that. If we didn't have that, imagine where we would be. And, we could be light years beyond. But what's one thing I thought was interesting is when you had the UFO guys on.
Yeah.
And I listened to that because I love, as much as I love, skepticism and stuff, I do like to play with Bigfoot and UFOs and stuff and ghosts. It's fun.
That was all things paranormal. And they're ghost hunters, Bigfoot hunters, and UFO hunters.
Yeah. And I love what you said, though, because it wasn't until your post that I went back and listened. But it was like, how do you guys feel about this? And then I was like, well, here's how I feel about it. And it turned out it was like dead on to what you had said. I was like, wow, cool. Tyler's got it going on. I mean, that's the thing, is space is just too vast.
Right.
And we are too below, that would be like us, we need to get to Austin immediately.
Right.
But let's stop at every ant bed on the way there and probe their civilizations.
Yeah, and marvel at the life. No, we wouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, we've got somewhere to be. We need to get there.
And we've discovered so little of the universe that it would be equivalent to you going out to the ocean, to the Gulf of Mexico, and scooping up a little shot glass of water and it not having a fish in it. And you saying, well, there's no life in the ocean. That's about what we've done in comparison to the universe.
Sure, yeah.
We've explored this small little neighborhood and just kind of assumed that there's no life. But there's lots of Earth-like planets out there, which is really cool because you watch this, with your hydrogen alpha telescope when a planet transits the sun.
Yeah.
And those solar systems have a sun, and those planets transit the sun. And then when that sunlight of their sun comes through the atmosphere, we can see, planets that have nitrogen and different elements that would indicate life, especially if they have oxygen in the atmosphere.
Sure.
It's typically highly reactive, so there's usually oxygen present if there's photosynthesis present. And if there's photosynthesis on another planet,
that's indicative of life.
Something growing out there.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about transiting planets, which, like you said, it goes in front of the star to our point of view, and it dims the light by less than 1%. We can detect that because we have sensitive enough instruments. Imagine all of the stars, though, where the planets are orbiting like this. From our perspective, we will never see them cross the disk of the star. They're just doing their own thing. Now we can detect that star has a Jupiter or so sized planet because the star itself will wobble as the planet is going around, like a shock. Is it shock put when they swing that thing around them?
Oh, like the hammer throw.
The hammer throw. Yeah. You see the guy is actually wobbling around while he's getting ready to release this thing. That's what a star is doing. So we can detect that way, and we can detect through the transiting method. There's two main methods, and it turns out that almost all the stars, even the dead ones like the neutron stars and stuff like that shouldn't have planets, some of the planetary nebulas and stuff, they have planets around them. And we're just now starting to learn all that. And I'm sure you're familiar with the Drake equation. Which is, it's a long equation that takes into account how we know life can come about. Which is only one little sliver of probably how possible life is. And that Drake equation says that there should be around 10,000 civilizations in our galaxy, or give or take a few thousand or so. But imagine that. Imagine if there's 50 civilizations like humanity around our galaxy. That's incredible. We'll never know.
And then to think that there's millions of other galaxies beyond the Milky Way.
Oh man.
Innumerable. Numbers and space on a cosmic scale really hurt your head, because we're finite beings and we have that finite number, and it's really hard for us to process.
The numbers get astronomical very quick.
They do. There's even crazy star systems like binary star systems where they have two suns and the two suns are orbiting around each other.
Oh, there's almost assuredly a Tatooine out there. You know what I mean? A planet with two stars.
Star Wars.
I mean, it's got to be. Yeah. If you're not familiar with Star Wars, I don't know what you're doing listening to this episode. So.
If you've made it this far in this episode.
Then, without seeing Star Wars, stop what you're doing and at least go watch that scene with Luke and the sons. But.
Right. So anything, we'll kind of wrap this up. Any big projects coming up for you and any events?
Yeah, I mean, I've got 2 star parties the rest of the year. The Okie-Tex Star Party, which is in the panhandle of Oklahoma. You can't get any more Oklahoma before you become New Mexico and Colorado. It's up actually what's called 3 corners. There's
and I would say that's pretty strategically placed to have a dark sky.
Oh, man, that's the darkest sky, period, in North America. I've heard the argument that there are places in Nebraska and stuff that are darker. I've never been there, so I can't say for sure, but all the places I've ever been, this is the blackest.
Maybe Big Bend.
Big Bend. There's a lot of drilling going on out there, which has kind of ruined the West Texas area. Which I've got a video on YouTube coming out about light pollution soon.
I've often wished that there could just be just one day a year
where we all turn it off.
Where we could just all. It would have to be
new moon. Let's do it new moon. When it's clear.
Because even when you go on a cruise in the middle of the ocean, if there's a full moon, it's too bright.
It might as well have city all around you.
And the cruise ship it's got a lot of lights on it too. But if there was just one day that it would, you'd have to get the government involved because all the street lights and emergency vehicles, and of course people would complain.
Oh, it would be panic. Pandemonium.
Oh, definitely. But man, the things that you would be able to see with the naked eye, and it would change people's life to be able to see the cloud of the Milky Way streak across the sky horizontally, from the naked eye.
Real quick, there's a famous story about an earthquake or a power outage that happened in Los Angeles.
That's the way to do it. I need to I need to find an electromagnetic pulse.
Yes, and we'll just knock it out for a week, and we may go to jail for it, but at least we had that week, right?
We did.
But the lights went out in L.A., and people were calling the police station worried about what this huge cloud thing was above them.
And it was the Milky Way.
It was the Milky Way, and they had never seen that before.
Oh man,
and that's truly sad. Like the Okie-Tex Star Party, the Milky Way casts shadows. It's that bright.
Wow.
If you're wearing a white T-shirt and you wave your hand in front of your T-shirt, you will see a shadow.
That's incredible.
Just because of how dark it is out there. And that's not from ambient lighting. That's the stars, And so there's that star party. There's the El Dorado Star Party, which is a lot closer. It's just on the other side of San Antonio, about 3 hours or so, near El Dorado, Sonora, Texas. We go to that one every year. So that's where you'll find me as far as star parties, and
and
lots of videos coming.
Yeah, tell everybody real quick on social media all the different accounts and how to find you.
It's Deep Sky Dude. You can, I mean, if you just Google
Probably
that.
Google it and you'll find all the platforms.
Yeah, I've got a Instagram, which is recently, thanks to Ron Sparkman and Fraser Kane of Astronomy Cast, they both let me use their platforms to just launch myself. So I'm at 17 or so hundred on there as well.
Yeah.
But I don't post a whole lot on Instagram and Twitter, but I'm there.
Yeah, so Instagram is a younger demographic typically, and so I think you'll do good on there eventually.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's picking up, and I can upload a picture of Betelgeuse, and people just go nuts, which is great. It makes me feel really good because I'm sharing astronomy. That's ultimately the goal. I don't really care about anything else. Being a pilot is probably going to become a career for me. Yeah. So the astronomy is still just a fun thing. But yeah, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Deep Sky Dude. You can find me on Spotify, iTunes, Deezer, whatever the crap that is. I don't even know what Deezer is. Tidal, Pandora. All the albums on all those. I've got another album. I'll go ahead and release the release date on here. You'll be the first.
Let's hear it.
September 13th will be Volume 2, Deep Sky Tunes Volume 2.
And if you want to, you can email me a track that I can use on the intro and outro of this episode.
Absolutely. Yeah. What we could also do, if you want to, is we could give away a copy. I mean, I don't know if you want to do that. You could pick somebody, and I'll just shoot them the album for free. Yeah,
we'll definitely do that. If you're listening right now, look for a post on my social media where we'll do a little giveaway for shares.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, and I mean, because I've made more money on that album than I ever thought I could. Which is not much. I mean, it's like less than $100.
And that's where people, I guess they go on to iTunes and download it, pay for a download just like you do for anything else.
Yeah, you buy the album, and I get whatever 60% of the cost of iTunes and all they all take a certain percentage and stuff. Right. Or if you just want to go stream it on Spotify, I get like a billionth of a penny every time you play a track. So just go leave it on your computers and let it roll, and I'd love that. But
there you go.
Again, if you can't support me through any monetary forms like that, or you're not into instrumental spacey style music, like and share my stuff. Come by and say hello every once in a while. Ask me a question. Or come join the Astronomical Society of Southeast Texas if you're in the area.
We meet at the planetarium, and it's the second Friday of every month, and visitors are always welcome.
Absolutely.
And it's really cool. I was down in Miami a couple weeks ago. I went scuba diving.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know this, but you can have dinner at the Versace mansion, which is like those steps is where he got shot and everything. And it's not owned by the family anymore. It's owned by a restaurant. But he had an observatory in his house. And so we were kind of, we ate dinner, and then we're kind of going around. There's a little sushi spot and bar, and we kept going higher and higher. And you really weren't supposed to go up there because there's rooms that they rent out. Yeah. But I just kept going up and up and up. And then I got to what looked kind of like a bell tower or something. And I went through the door, and there's no AC. It's super hot. And I about lost my mind because the whole ceiling, it was more for looks. The whole ceiling had been, painted like the night sky, kind of like Starry Night. And then there was the little slit. And I saw a telescope downstairs. And I was like, why is this telescope downstairs? It's just like a figure piece. Well, it came from up there. And so it was an observatory with the glass, and the window would raise up like this.
Yeah, the shutter. Wow, I didn't realize he was into that sort of thing.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
And it was just in his, and it may have already been there because he didn't originally, he wasn't the first owner of that property. He added onto it and added the travertine pool and everything. But just walked right up into an and it's crazy to think that Gianni Versace probably sat right here and had parties and things.
Yeah,
and
checked out,
and maybe looked at the stars.
Oh yeah, more than likely looked at Jupiter, the moon, and all that fun stuff. Had friends over, and that's the goal for me. Is I'm actually working on building an observatory in my backyard.
Yeah, okay.
It'll be that dome style
to shield the light.
Yeah, and I mean it's basically it's the ease of use. You have all your equipment always set up.
Oh right,
so when the sky is
rainproof.
Yeah, when the sky is clear, you open the shutter, you hit a few switches, you're in business.
That makes sense because it does take a long time to set up that gear. And
way too long, man. And that, a lot of the time I leave it out in my front yard, just covered, and so that the night comes, I pull it off. If I know I'm going to have a couple of days, it's worth the 30 minutes or so that it takes to set up. Yeah. And I'll just tarp it, or I have a special cover, and wait till the next night, untarp it, get everything set up, and I'm back in business, man. And it's just so awesome to have, you flip like 3 switches and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
And so that's in the works right now. But the pilot thing, and I also want to get some night vision for some of the videos in the future so I can videotape star parties at night.
Right.
So there's a few other projects that I'm working on that are going to be kind of monetarily intensive. So
and those star parties are like a meeting of the minds.
Oh man,
there's so many talented astronomers, and the knowledge of and it's usually like a camping atmosphere with RVs and tents.
Yep.
But the amount of knowledge,
dude,
is
you're talking about the best visual observers on the planet ever. People that write for Sky and Telescope, for Astronomy Magazine.
Are right there, just chatting behind.
Yeah, they'll walk by your scope with the beverage in their hand, whether it's a beer or coffee or whatever, and they'll be like, "Well, what you looking at?" "I'm looking at M57. Come look."
Right.
And then you start a conversation with these people, and I've met so many awesome people.
Yeah, the networking is worth it alone.
It's crazy, dude. You meet. I met 5 dudes from Australia at the Texas Star Party 2018. And they're lifelong friends, man. We immediately hit it off. We're all of like minds, and we're all at the same place. It's a like-minded society out at those star parties,
right? And
at the Beaumont Astronomy Club too.
Yeah, I really enjoy those people.
They're really awesome. We have a really good group of really insanely smart people here in Beaumont, and we meet. So come join us, because if you another thing, I hate to jump on too many things, but if you're looking for a telescope, if you don't know what to buy, don't ask somebody what to buy. Come to an astronomy meeting.
Yeah, for sure.
And talk to the people.
That was actually the reason I ended up joining, because I was wanting to dabble in getting my own. And I found out about the club, and I learned that you could rent the scopes. And I was like, that's what I need is a mentor, someone to kind of set it up and say, look here. And so I've really enjoyed the group. We've got people that are from all walks of life,
Totally.
Professors at Lamar, retirees, young children, and everything in between.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing that when you learn about each person's, their main career, and then you've got, Eddie Trevino, who's also a master observer, I think, right?
He hasn't made master though, but he's working
close,
on it.
yeah.
He's and the dude's just a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
He went out with me to West Texas recently. He's a really good friend of mine. And Eddie's just a really cool guy. And that seems to be the pervasive thing. It's just everybody's really cool. They're very knowledgeable people.
Yeah. We kind of have like a local comet expert.
Yeah. Justin McCollum. He's very good at comets.
Yeah, we call him Professor Comet. And,
and
sometimes he'll do a presentation, and I'm just like, I need to take notes or something.
He's a very brilliant guy, and like you're saying, it's just full of that kind of people. So if you're listening to this and you live in Dallas or you live in Wisconsin, wherever, look for a local astronomy club, because if you're even halfway interested in maybe getting a telescope, those are the people to talk to about what not to get, what to avoid, how much do you have, what do you want to do? Yeah,
almost every major city has an astronomical society out there.
Absolutely.
And they're all nonprofits, and in addition to the membership dues, which are very, very low, ours are like $30 for a year. The value that you get from that $30 is just, you're not going to find that in any class or anywhere else. And in order to get those cool things like these multi-$1,000 telescopes, one way that's really neat to get donations is from Amazon. All of us buy stuff on Amazon. If you go to smile.amazon.com, then you can contribute 0.05% to a charity, and it's not actually your dollars, it's actually Amazon's dollars. So whatever you buy, if you buy a widget on Amazon, you're just paying the same price. All you have to do is go to a web browser and select Astronomical Society of Southeast Texas, and then Amazon will take it upon itself to donate 0.05 of that transaction.
Yeah.
And so I always try to be creative, and I ordered a set of tires because that's kind of like a big budget item,
right?
And make sure that it's going
that's
to.
We appreciate that, man. Yeah. We've made close to $1,000.
Yeah,
of just free money.
Yeah, it's like quarterly deposits, and sometimes it's like 60 or 100 here or more.
Yeah,
just depending. And Christmas time, I try to do a lot of Christmas shopping on there and make sure that it goes through assets. So,
that's good, man. We appreciate that, and we appreciate everybody that does that stuff, or whether you're donating money to the club or just paying dues.
Yeah.
And we take that money and we put it into equipment. We put it into the club to buy new things, to go out and go to middle schools, Kids Fest in Port Arthur, whatever it is. And we bring the astronomy to the people.
Right.
And that's where you see the life change in some of these kids, and some of the adults too. Some of the adults come away from the eyepiece like,
Wow, yeah.
Did I just see that? And you're like, yeah, you did.
And other than Asset, there's nobody else doing that.
Not around here, right?
No, for sure. When you set up shop at an event, I mean, you're the only astronomical club there. With that level of gear and telescopes and things. So.
Yeah, and the level of people that we have is like we were saying. It's just it's something special, man. And we really do have something special, and it's great to have you as a part of it. It's great to have all those people because, like you said, everybody's so different, but we all come together for this, the same purpose. And it's a beautiful thing, man. It really is.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, man.
If things come through with the flat Earth debate, I'll definitely have to get you in on there.
Yeah. If not, I'll just tune in and grab some popcorn and enjoy. But hey, I wanted to say that you're doing an awesome job, man. And I love what you're doing. I love the guys from A to Z, Aaron and Zach. Those guys have really kind of helped us all get going with all this, especially with you guys doing the podcast and everything.
For sure. Yeah, I say it all the time. This wouldn't be possible without them. I would still be probably Googling what to do at this point. And here I am rocking and rolling. This coming Saturday is episode 8.
Awesome.
You'll be around, 9 or 10, somewhere around there. And everything's just gone off without a hitch. No problems. I've got Zach on the back end that helps with a lot of editing.
Yeah, Zach's a beast, man. He's a like-minded audio guy too. So
yeah.
I remember when I first met him, we connected on that. We're like, I saw his tattoo. He has a cardioid mic pattern.
Oh yeah.
On his chest, and I was like, dude, is that a cardioid mic pattern? And he was like, you're like one of the first people that's ever known what that was. And I was like, well, dude, I'm an audio guy.
That's
right. And so that we immediately became good friends on the astronomy tip. So he's a good dude.
But yeah, I really appreciate the feedback because I mainly want to produce good content and things that are entertaining.
I love it. Like when I'm driving somewhere or stuff, I'm either listening to you or Zach and Aaron or one of those podcasters I listen to. So I appreciate what you guys are doing, man. And I appreciate you having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been fun watching your progression, man. I look forward to where you go from here. I think you got something special, man.
Oh, thank you, sir. Well, to all the listeners, once again, today is the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11 and the Saturn V launch. So if you've never seen that, if you don't even know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube, do yourself a favor, and search Saturn V and watch that big candlestick take off. So, all right. Well, I'm Tyler, host of the Tyler Knows Everything podcast, where the nose is crossed out because I always want to learn more. And thanks, Will.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you so much, Will Young. Can't wait to have you back. Hopefully the next time you're in the studio, we'll be on a tag team debate with a flat earth theory. That's going to be super entertaining. This is another great episode sponsored by Taiku Drain. Ty's over there on episode 5 if you want to go back and check that out. Ty really believes in the content that we're pushing out and is excited to help support that cause and help out with some of the studio costs. So check that out and go see what Ty's all about. I'm Tyler, host of the Tyler Knows Everything podcast, where the nose is crossed out because I always want to learn more. See you next time.